How's it going, everyone? This is Mike. Welcome back to my channel. And I'm sharing with you my glass of non-alcoholic sangria since I've been told to stop drinking. More on that later. Anyway, so I'd like to show and tell about what I've picked up at the Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection half-price sale this month, July 2019. Today is July 31st, and I think I'm done. I'm not sure. I've actually bought more things during this sale than I did at any other time. I'm not complaining because I picked up a lot of good stuff, but I think I'm done. I've done more than enough damage to my credit card. We'll see. I think they have about 5 days to go, so I might go back just one more time. Anyway, so I'd like to start out by showing you the films that I bought since I bought them on Criterion. Some of the films that I've seen before, but I have not yet watched the Criterion versions. And then the last ones will be the ones that I have not watched at all. Okay, so starting off with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers in Swing Time, 1936, directed by George Stevens. Really, in my opinion, their absolute #1 film. It's just pure magic from start to finish. Great comedy. Well, the stories in these films are not really that important, but it's usual mistaken identities and confusion and all sorts of things. But very funny support from people like Helen Broderick and Eric Bloor. But Astaire and Rogers are just absolutely at their peak, doing some of their best dancing. Let's see, they do the best number is Never Gonna Dance, which is the last number in the film, probably their masterpiece. Pick Yourself Up, The Way You Look Tonight, Waltz in Swing Time, and Astaire does a fantastic solo called Bojangles of Harlem, which was supposedly an homage to the great dancer of that era, Bill Bojangles Robinson, which Astaire does in blackface. It's still somewhat controversial. And there's a terrific video essay from a film scholar named, I think her name is Mia Mask, who talks about that number in a way that I had never even thought about it before. It's really fascinating and well done. So, Swing Time. Next up is a German film from 1975 called Fox and His Friends, directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder. Now, I've only seen a few of Fassbinder's films, and I'd like to see more of his work. I picked this up because it was just a single. It wasn't included in a box set. Some of the other films that they had available are in box sets that I would like to buy eventually, and I didn't want to pick up the single films. So I picked this up out of curiosity. It's a fascinating film about a man named Fox, played by Fassbinder himself, who is a gay man living in Germany. He's trying to enter a different class. He's very working class. He has these ideas that he must become something bigger than what he is. So he attaches himself to this very wealthy, very pretentious man who takes advantage of him, and Fox just kind of lets this man do anything he wants with his money and with his life, and he ends up destroying himself. It's a very tragic film to watch, but it's fascinating, and Fassbinder at his best. And like I said, I need to see a lot more of his work. Next is an English film, a classic, Women in Love, directed by Ken Russell, based on the novel by D.H. Lawrence, which I have not read. This stars, let's see, who does it star? Yes, Glenda Jackson, who won an Academy Award, Alan Bates, Oliver Reed, and Jenny Linden. And this is a beautiful film that I had never seen before, and it's wonderful and very colorful and very literate. And there's a long interview with Glenda Jackson on one of the features. I could listen to Glenda Jackson speak for hours and hours just to listen to her voice, her diction. It's just an amazingly intelligent woman, fascinating. And this is something I will watch again and again. I'm interested now in reading the book, so I will get around to that eventually. Next up is an American film from the early 1980s called Smithereens, directed by Susan Seidelman. It's kind of a low-budget, independent, experimental film starring an actress named Susan Berman as a young woman in New York City who is trying to make herself famous just for being famous and attach herself to the sort of punk rock movement, music and cultural movement that was going on in New York at the time. And it's a New York that certainly I've never been to New York. I've never experienced any of the periods of New York culture, but I guess the culture of the early 1980s is just not in existence anymore. But it's fascinating to look at. I used to watch this back on cable TV quite a bit back in the 80s, and I always liked it. So yeah, this is something I will watch again and again. Really interesting to look at. Next up is another English film from a director named Mike Leigh, and this is called Meantime. And this is from, let's see, what year is this from? 1984. And I've never seen anything by Mike Leigh before, and a couple of the actors I've heard of, like Tim Roth and Gary Oldman. I guess this is one of his first films. It's about a family living in London, and a mother and a father and their two grown sons who live at home. They are all unemployed. Their lives are very claustrophobic as they live in this very small apartment, and everyone is angry. Everyone is bitter. Everyone's looking for a job, or they've given up looking for a job. It's fascinating to watch. It's a slice of life of a different culture, a culture that I'm not familiar with, but it's easy to relate to things that are going on in this country as well, and it's fascinating. Great acting by everybody. And Gary Oldman is not a member of the family, but he's a friend of the two brothers, and he's crazy, absolutely crazy. He plays a skinhead who just his whole life is chaos, you know. So yeah, very good film. Very glad to have that. Next up, it's a film called Clute, Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland, directed by Alan J. Pakula. Now, I had seen this film on cable TV back in the 80s. I've seen it maybe 2 or 3 times, and I never understood why it was considered to be such a classic film or a great performance by Jane Fonda. I just never really got it. And it always kind of bothered me that I didn't understand. I didn't see what everybody else was seeing. So when I found out that it was coming out on Criterion, I couldn't wait to see it and give it more of a mature look now that I'm a lot older and all that. And I have to say that I appreciated it much, much more. And there were so many nuances to Jane Fonda's character. She really was a great actress. And it's a good mystery. I had forgotten so much about it that it was like seeing it for the first time. I didn't remember who the killer was or anything like that. So, yeah, great. Now, this also has a couple of interviews with Jane Fonda, one of which was back shortly after the film came out. And I remember her from that era very well. And she's another one that I could listen to for hours, just like Glenda Jackson, just listening to her voice. And there are a lot of things about Jane Fonda's beliefs and all that, things she did that I didn't necessarily agree with everything, but she's fascinating to listen to. Another very literate person, very intelligent. Next up is an Italian classic, Bicycle Thieves by De Sica, that I had never seen before, and this is one of those films that it is so designated as a classic that so many people have said amazing things about that I was ready to appreciate it and ready to like it even before I saw it. So I finally got around to watching it for the first time, and it did not disappoint. It was absolutely incredible, so I'm very happy to have this. I was surprised at how moving it was. Really a wonderful film. Next up is the film noir classic Kiss Me Deadly from the 1950s, directed by Robert Aldrich, which I have seen many times. I have another version of it, which I can give away now. And again, seeing it in pristine perfection is really wonderful. What can I say about this? It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And yeah, Kiss Me Deadly. All right. Next up is another American film from 1961, A Raisin in the Sun, directed by Daniel Petrie, from the play by Lorraine Hansberry, who also wrote the screenplay. Sidney Poitier, Claudia McNeil, Ruby Dee, Diana Sands, Ivan Dixon, John Fiedler. What can I say? This is one of the best films ever made in America. It's amazing that it didn't take every Oscar that ever existed during the year 1961, but it didn't. And I've seen this many, many times over the years, but never this perfectly, I guess, on Blu-ray. And it never fails to move me, even though I know everything that people are going to say, everything they're going to do. What great actors. Poitier was so good. Claudia McNeil really is the center of the film as the mother who was trying to make things better for her family. It's just a beautiful, sad, sorry, but at the end a very hopeful film. Yeah, very interesting. All right, here's another English film that I'd seen part of it before, but never all of it. Black Narcissus from the year 1947, starring Deborah Kerr as an Anglican nun who is with a religious order in India, and she gets sent to open a convent at this building that is at the top of this high mountain where the air is very thin. People tend to be delusional because they're breathing in this air. Anyway, it's fascinating. It's beautiful. It's yeah, it's just very strange. I can't believe I never saw this all the way through, but I haven't. Black Narcissus. Directed by the Archers, the team of Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. And yeah, let's see. Okay. Black Narcissus. Finally, my first experience with Ozu, Tokyo Story, from the year 1953. Let's see, this is Yasuhiro Ozu. I've heard so much about Ozu. I've read a lot about him from Roger Ebert, who was a big fan of his. And again, it's something that I was ready to like before I even put it in the player. It's beautiful to look at. Gorgeous black and white cinematography, the way he frames every one of the scenes as if it were a painting. It's just incredible. The story itself is deceptively simple. It's about a family in Tokyo, different family members in Tokyo who are getting ready for their elderly parents to come and visit. They live in another city. And it has all the people in the family slowly getting away from their politeness toward their parents and to each other and revealing their true feelings. And it ends up being very sad, very tragic. It's a look into a culture that I have no connection with, I know nothing about, and it's fascinating and just beautiful to look at. So I will watch this again and again as well, and hopefully this will let me enter into the world of Ozu. All right. So now, as far as a couple of films that I've seen before, but I have not yet watched on the Criterion versions that I bought, I finally got around to picking up Modern Times, directed by and starring Charlie Chaplin and his wife at the time, Paulette Goddard, one of my favorite actresses from the 1930s and 40s. This is from 1936, his famous silent film during the talkie era, and I've only seen this one time, and many years ago I saw it on the big screen and it was wonderful. So I'm very happy to get this on DVD, 2-disc set. So you can't go wrong with good old Charlie, right? So I'm very happy to have that. Another film that I bought that I've seen many times is Anatomy of a Murder from the year 1959, starring James Stewart, George C. Scott, Lee Remick, Ben Gazzara, Arthur O'Connell, Eve Arden, Catherine Grant, directed by, who is the director? Otto Preminger, of course. Now, I remember seeing this when it first came out at a drive-in with my parents and my sister. Of course, I would have been 1959, 1960, might have been 1960 when we saw it. I would have been 8 or 9 years old, and it was interesting sitting in the. I can remember when they started talking about the pink panties on the screen, and funny you would remember that, 9 years old, with being a little uncomfortable with my parents and not even knowing why. Really, just you just sense that there was something really wicked going on the screen, right? Because Lee Remick was just like sex on 2 legs, but it was a very good movie. Anyway, I haven't watched this yet. I just watched this movie a very short while ago on the version that I had before, which was really a bad print, and I was very happy to pick this up and hopefully get into some of the extra features. And yeah, Anatomy of a Murder, great movie, great performance by Jimmy Stewart. Okay, so here are the films that I've never seen before, and the first one is Terrence Malick's New World, or The New World, which this is a very long movie, 172 minutes, and so I'm a big fan of Terrence Malick. I haven't seen a lot of his work, but what I have seen, I like very much. Things like Days of Heaven and Badlands, so I thought I would go ahead and spend a little money on getting this. I've heard a lot of good things about it. Next up is another box set that I picked up. This is Roberto Rossellini's War Trilogy. We have Germany, Year Zero, Paisan, and Rome Open City. Heard many good things about all these films, and I've never seen anything by Rossellini. So this will be opening up a whole new world for me. And it's really nice packaging here, folks. Okay. All right. Okay. Now next up is a film called Black Girl. I picked this up today. In fact, I picked up Rossellini today, and this film, and the last one I'm going to show you. I picked them up just a few hours ago. This is a film by a director from Senegal, whose name is Ousmane Sembène. And it's about a young black woman from Senegal who comes to France to work for a rich white family, and supposedly she finds that her life in their apartment is almost like a prison, both psychologically and physically. And it sounds like a really fascinating movie. I've always been curious about this, heard many things about it, have never seen it. 1966, it's only about 59 minutes long, black and white. So yeah, this will be about a culture that another culture that I have no connection with. Maybe I'll learn something. We shall see. And finally, I bought another American film from Francis Ford Coppola. This is Rumblefish, in black and white, starring one of my favorite actors, Matt Dillon, also Diane Lane, Mickey Rourke, Lawrence Fishburne. I saw part of this on cable TV way back in the day. Don't remember that much about it, except that it was beautiful to look at, and have never seen it all. So this will be interesting. 2-disc set. So anyway, that's the end of everything I bought. I'd like to show you 2 more films that I bought several months ago when they first came out. I didn't wait for the Criterion sale because I was so anxious to get them, and I paid full price very happily. The first is A Face in the Crowd, starring Andy Griffith, Patricia Neal, Lee Remick, Walter Matthau. This is directed by Elia Kazan from 1957. I had never seen this before either, and this was, of course, a few years before Andy Griffith became famous on television as Sheriff Andy Taylor. And it's kind of hard not to think of Andy Taylor when he's acting because he still has kind of the same accent. But wow, what a great movie. It just blew me away. He is so over the top as this drifter named Lonesome Rose, who somehow manages to become sort of an anti-Will Rogers type on American television. A really interesting movie, and yeah, he is very good. I will watch this again and again. And finally, this is a film that I absolutely fell in love with, that I had never heard of before until I read something about it in a magazine, and this is called Wanda, from the year 1970. It is a low-budget, kind of an experimental film. It was written, produced, directed, and starred in by a woman named Barbara Loden, who plays the title character. Barbara Loden is not exactly a household name. She was an actress on the stage, and she made a few films, and then she directed this one movie, and that was it, pretty much. And I remember her from a movie back in 1961 called Splendor in the Grass. She played a supporting role. She played Warren Beatty's younger sister, and she basically stole the picture. The film was directed by Elia Kazan, who later she became married to. They may have been married at the same time. At the time that she did Splendor in the Grass, I'm not sure, but they were married until she died very young, sometime in the 1980s. And this is a fascinating film about a woman in rural Pennsylvania, in kind of a poverty-stricken area that she's living sort of a low life. She's at the beginning of the film, she's being divorced by her husband. She's losing custody of her 2 children. She seems to be someone who is just drifting and has no hope, no ambition, no self-knowledge at all. And it's fascinating to watch her just kind of continue to destroy herself throughout this film. I can't stop thinking about it. I've already watched it twice, and I know I'll watch it again. I wrote a commentary about this movie on my Letterboxd page, and I said, Wanda has the look and feel of a reality show that might play on late-night cable TV after the zombie apocalypse has decimated most of Western civilization. And that's it. I stand by that comment. So anyway, I've taken up almost 20 minutes of your time. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you've seen any of these films. Well, I know a lot of you have seen many of these classic films, so I'd love to hear your comments, your ideas. Everything is always welcome. So I will see you next time. Take care.